Middlekauff! Hey! What's up? Hello. Welcome to the show. For those of you watching on YouTube, good to have you. Subscribe to this channel. Like this video. If you're listening to the podcast, Mailbag will be making a return, so please leave us reviews on iTunes. 5 stars. Leave us a question. In that question, maybe also add your favorite place to watch a game, your favorite bar, that kind of favorite bar. That's what we've been doing, right?
Favorite bar, yeah. Favorite bar. Would you pay me 10 grand a podcast to do something crazy?
Somebody in the comments, actually, do we have this? It says $100,000 every time you guys. John, I'll give you 100K every time you start the stream early. There are some allegations on Twitter, on YouTube, that we don't start the stream on time. Well,
here's always my pushback.
Time is whose time? Yeah, we appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah, 100%. The internet is not what we grew up on in television. We're not Costanza's dad, where the TV guide tells us exactly what time the show is coming on, and you had the TV guide, and if you didn't get there at 8 and you showed up at 8:30, your show was over. The internet's an ever-running operation, and sometimes we just, Haberman sets the time a little early, and then we end up talking.
Well, yeah, here's what happens. We always intend to start on time. We appreciate people being there before we start. Just a little buildup is good. I don't mean anticipation buildup. I just mean having some. It feels better to start it when there's more people waiting. You know what I mean? But I want to respect people's time, and if we say it's a certain time, not show up 30 minutes after that time because people got things to do. So hopefully it's an okay situation for everybody, and we appreciate everybody hanging.
I was thinking today, like if we had like kids or just a lot of other stuff going on in our life, we'd have to be much more efficient. It's like Kyle was watching. He's like, they asked him about Tom Brady. He's like, yeah, before I was married and just didn't really have shit to do, I would just go into Tampa Bay's facility, and I was like, shit, I'll just watch Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And he's like, it actually kind of made sense. He's like, those were the kind of the quarterback fundamentals. I was a wide receiver, but I just be in there late at night by myself. It's like, yeah, it was just kind of I can't basically say I could not do that now. Like I couldn't just like on a random Tuesday in April be like, I'm just going to go check out Joe Burrow's season. You got to take like the kids to basketball practice or whatever.
Yeah. And the beauty is this is also a podcast. You can watch it later. Sometimes I've noticed people will start the YouTube like an hour after as we're in it, but they'll be at the beginning and they'll leave a comment about something that happened, 60 minutes ago. So, that's always key. Paul says, bet they start on time if a potential sponsor is watching. LOL. So, real quick, can we do 2 minutes here? Yeah, I'm Elliot. We've gotten this question a lot over the last month, and we haven't avoided it for any particular reason other than we've had a lot of other things to talk about, and we try not to do 3-hour shows. But yeah, I'm Elliot says, where is the Tito's sponsor? Tito's was for those of you maybe have joined the show in the last month, Tito's, who just donated $20 million to Texas athletics.
Yo, Tito!
for what was it, like a football facility? Tito's was our presenting sponsor through the football season, through the end of the calendar year. So our deal with Tito's ended on December 31st. And I don't know what you want to say. We could address this. We're happy because people supported it, which we really appreciate.
I mean, we supported it. We drink Tito's. We love Tito's, and the game plan is to have them continue to be involved moving forward. We have continued to speak with them and talk with them. I love this. Dialogue will continue. You often hear that before free agency comes up. We will have, I saw Brett Veach say this, we will have dialogue with their representation, their representatives. So the dialogue is ongoing. We love, believe, and still swear by the brand. They were, it was a big deal to land them. And
when you came over on Friday, we were drinking Tito's at the house. So...
Oh, yeah.
You got Tito's in your cup right now.
I finally had your ginger beer. No drinking today at 2:30, just water.
You finally had the ginger beer.
Yeah, Tito's is fantastic.
Yeah. John says Ciroc from here on out.
Pop off.
Is Ciroc still going?
It's a good question. I think Diddy feels like he kind of set the tone for every famous rich guy. Like, there's something here, guys, and this shit can taste like toilet water, but you just put yourself on a commercial and you will sell some bad boys.
Yep. And now
ask old Dwayne.
Casamigos. That one's
That one's
That's
good.
Clooney?
Though. I will
That
say
one Clooney?
that is legitimate tequila. Like if I drink tequila,
Yeah.
I drink Casamigos. Like that.
I hear people order Casamigos. Yes.
Casamigos. Ciroc, I always felt like was just pop off the plastic bottle in a sweet bottle with Puff Daddy holding it. You know, again, could be wrong. We're Tito's people. Well,
Yeah.
you know, when they get back,
Unless
you gotta buy
Casamigos
exclusivity.
wants to jump on board. Yeah. Good time. No, but isn't the rock stuff supposed to be good?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, he's hyping it up like it's the number one tequila, but I just don't necessarily believe him.
Here's the other thing I don't understand. I guess it's like Heineken has been doing this whole month long zero, or they've been doing it longer than a month, a few years now. They're like zero alcohol Heinekens. Are there people that love the taste of beer that much that don't want the alcohol?
Well,
Dry January that just like
I played golf with a guy who was on the actually PGA Tour who had a drinking problem and who's sober now and drinks. He was drinking.
he just likes it satisfies something.
Yeah, I think there's an element of, if you have an addiction issue and you curb it, it's like people with cigarettes, right? With the Nicorette gum. I think some of that.
Yeah.
Now, to me, if you separate those people, that's very understandable. Are there people that like it? Like, who in their right mind would drink decaf coffee?
I mean, every person over, everybody that always came to my parents' house for dinner when I was a kid, like my grandparents my parents, like, who wants some coffee afterwards? How about a hot drink? It was always like, how about a hot drink? Do you have decaf?
I could somewhat understand post-dinner drink if you're going to go to sleep, but decaf in the morning?
No. Yeah. To me, it was always in the Haberman house. It was always like, anybody want a hot drink? It's like, I'll have some decaf. Like, I'll have some decaf. And then there's always someone like, I'd like a regular. But it was always the Haberman.
Is the logic behind the coffee post dinner to clear you out, or is it just
could be? I think it's just like a nice post. We ate, we had some dessert, but it's something to hold and share, and post meal.
Keep the combos flowing.
Yeah, yeah. You want some cream with that? Yeah. My best friend's wife drinks Bush while pregnant. Oh, Bush without alcohol, like NA. Bush. All right.
I didn't mean to do that.
I could never figure out. So I smoke before and after dinner. One other comment before we dive in was, I don't know where it went. Somebody asked, is there going to be body language analysis from the 49ers press conference today? Yes. Yes, there is. You know us very well. We are big body language guys. We are big body language. Jack asked, if Stephen Ross was trying to bribe Brian Flores to throw games, could he be forced out as an owner? This, as we're recording this, the news of Brian Flores' lawsuit just broke. And one of the things in there, I think probably by the time you're listening to the podcast, people know this, but if you're watching the YouTube, is that Brian Flores alleges that Stephen Ross offered him $100,000 for every game he would lose leading up to the 2020 draft because he wanted to tank. And damn it, Brian Flores was too good at coaching football games, apparently.
So he was essentially, Stephen Ross was offering him $100,000 a week until December 31st, because at the time there wasn't 17 weeks, to get Joe Burrow. I'm going to pay you to make sure we get Joe Burrow. Nothing has aged better than that, right? Because even at the time, and I tweeted this out, I think during the first round of the playoffs, it's like they had an all-time, obviously before this story, came out, that they tanked that season. Remember, they traded everyone, they blew it up, they tried to lose, but they won 3 of their last 5 games. And I remember George Sedano, who's a big Dolphins fan, like tweeted back at me because I said, what an all-time disaster. And he's like, well, and he's a big Dolphin guy. There was a lot of public pressure. Like, are you guys really just tanking? And they kind of gave in. And maybe Flores, like you said, is too good of a coach. But they won 3 of their last 5 games to go from 1, because they were a lock to get the number 1 pick, to the 5th pick. And then they had a coin flip and they Burrow to choose between the 2 guys. You losing me?
I am a little bit, yeah.
How's that possible?
Is that me or you?
It's me, but I don't know. I'm plugged in.
All right. Well, somebody shots were fired at a local mall, maybe. That's a bar. Sorry, I should probably, in context, that joke is that's why Xfinity Internet was out the other day, because somebody shot some bullets and hit some wires at a mall. Say that part again. Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, they would have, because clearly, I think when the season started, it was tank for Tua, tank for Tua, tank for Tua. Then the season plays out. It's clear Tua, one, he's injured, and two,
They lose 7 straight to start the year.
The Dolphins do.
Yeah.
But I'm saying when they were losing the games, I do think it was the closest thing we'd had since suck for luck. Like there was a legit saying, tank for Tua.
The Darnold one, there was a Darnold one, remember?
Was there?
I thought there was a Jets fan in the Darnold uniform, maybe?
It doesn't feel like, but I mean, there was a saying, tank for Tua.
Yeah.
And then he hurts his hip, and then you're like, well, was he even that good? No, I mean, listen, it's a little unfair to play that now. He was good, but he was small. And then Joe Burrow had one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen. And I think by the end of that season, it was like Joe Burrow's going number 1. But they fucked up, and the Bengals just naturally sucked. And then they chose the wrong player. And then the stories of the last couple years have been he's kind of a major dick to Tua. Like, he didn't want Tua. Maybe he did. It was hard. It's one of those that no one really knows.
Yeah.
$100,000 a tank, though. I think everyone listening would be like, God, he fucked up there. He should have taken.
Well, I saw somebody made a good point. They're like, you can't trying to get a Belichick guy to lose on purpose. It's pretty hard to do. Because Bill refused, right? Bill could have tanked in 20 for the 21 draft and well, that would have been the thing to do, right? Go get Trevor Lawrence. And he's out there trying to win 8 games?
7?
With, Cam Newton. So, I mean, it really would have been the move, right? But I guess it's just not it's just not in him.
No.
It's not in him. So the other piece that I thought was interesting from the allegations, well, there are a lot of things. He has photos of every head coach and every GM in his, and obviously as of the moment, there's one white or one black coach, but he has the thing about the Broncos. He says John Elway was late and they looked like they'd been drinking the night before, which is probably true.
John Elway was always notorious at the combine for partying pretty hard.
Oh, I forgot about this. George Sedano. You mentioned George Sedano. Can I tell you a brief George Sedano story from you? This is like my old school radio life.
I like George Sedano.
Yeah, I like him too. So, anyone that's listened to radio, especially more so like I'd say, anytime in the 90s and definitely the, 2000 to like 2015, where like you could hear a team was playing another team. It probably happens now. And you just get somebody from that local market to come on and talk about a game, right? Anybody, like producers will schedule beat writers and radio analysts and other radio hosts from sister stations, whatever.
Bill Williamson had that on lock for the Raiders for a long time.
Bill Williams, yeah. And you'd get somebody from the other market, and then their producer would ask you to come on their show, that type of thing, right? So from like 2007 to 2000 and late 2012, I was doing radio on an ESPN affiliate in Fresno, California, okay, which for people who don't know is dead set in the middle of California. Fresno State is there. Jake Hainer, Guy Haberman, John Middlekauff, we all went to school there. So I'm doing radio there, and our producer, the Miami Heat are like, this is the peak LeBron, D-Wade, right? That situation. So our producer of the afternoon show, which I was no longer on, sends a DM, or maybe he has George Sedano's number and says, hey, will you come on and talk about the Miami Heat, right? And as you know, because you get it all the time, people are constantly trying to book you on shows, and you just can't do it all. Especially, I can imagine those guys in Miami were getting hit up a lot. So he says, I can't do it, but talk to this other guy. Here's his number. So the producer calls the guy. They book him. He comes on the show, the afternoon show, and the host interviews the guy. And the guy just is, Fresno this. I went through Fresno once, and Jerry Tarkanian, and what an awesome place, and all this kind of stuff. And they're having a good time on the radio. The interview ends. The guy reaches out and says, hey, can I get a copy of my interview? The producer sends it to him. Well, it turns out the guy was fake. He was like a catfish. He was not a real host. He was a made-up character that Lebitard's show would like send to other, usually smaller areas, probably around the country, have them do radio hits, then have the guy say ridiculous things. Imagine him being like a Jimmy Kimmel character, right?
Yeah. And then they play it on the radio show.
Yeah. Have the guy say things like, Doghouse Grill, man, I love that place, right? Just things that make just things that make people feel good, kind of fucked up. And then they would play it back and laugh at it. And that's what they did.
Kind of genius.
Kind of genius, right? Because people are always asking, and you don't know how to. And I just remember the producer, who's an awesome guy, felt rightfully so like, oh my God, I got hosed on this one. Because he did. Not the nicest thing to do, but legitimately funny, Legitimate.
Part of comedy, though, comedy like that is not going to be nice. I mean, what's
That's
his
right.
name? Kimmel. What's Kimmel's little guy's name? I mean, is it or Biff was Letterman's guy? It's kind
Biff
of
was Letterman's yeah.
It's fucking with you. I mean, it's kind of what the Nelk boys have taken it to another level with their YouTube stuff. But that's just kind of what it is.
It is an old school classic thing to do. Yeah.
I would say it's somewhat run its course. It's a little different now because you have to up the ante so high.
Right. And it's harder to trick people now. That's the other thing, right? It's Johnny Knoxville
with $1.
Yeah, with anything like pretending to be somebody, knocking on the door. Hello, ma'am. I'm here from whatever. Anyway, Guillermo, is that what you think?
Yeah. Like they sent him to the NBA Finals,
but everyone knows Guillermo. Like you're not tricking anybody with
by
Guillermo.
now. But I'd say early on, it was a little bit. Now you're right, but I'd say some of the guys like you send Guillermo to the NBA Finals. Not every player knows what the fuck's going on.
Or like, how about like probably back in the day, any like Daily Show correspondent that would like set up a real interview with a real person, and then they're like,
Remember the Man Show with Kimmel and Carolla?
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. All right. So we watched we got a few things to react to here because Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch had a press conference today. And then Jimmy Garoppolo spoke. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were asked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Have you talked to him about where you're going to send him? Are you working with him? They said, yeah, we haven't had a lot of time during the season. This is what Jimmy Garoppolo said.
John's been very clear with it. I think they're trying to do the best for me. I'm trying to do the best for them. And we're working together in that. Really haven't made too much progress on it, but I think things will start happening here pretty quickly.
What'd you think of that?
Who wears the medium Travis Matthews better, me or Jimmy?
Is it the same hoodie?
John's been very
he's a
clear
Travis
with
Matthews
it.
guy.
I mean,
how's he so dark?
The string on his hoodie is a little like yours is longer. Your string is.
I'll tell you why it's longer.
Your neck is not as thick.
He's just thicker, so he just fills it out more.
Yeah, looks good. You both. I mean, looks good on both of you.
Could you play that one more time? I was just staring at his hoodie.
Oh,
John's been very clear with it. I think they're trying to do the best for me. I'm trying to do the best for them, and we're working together in that. Really haven't made too much progress on it, but I think things will start happening here pretty quickly.
So obviously he's got the surgery, a week, month and a half, maybe less. But he's got a pretty good idea, right?
He had mentioned that he's going to meet with a specialist, and the ideal hope is to avoid surgery. He had said that in this press conference. So now, maybe Don Yee was already telling Rap Sheet that it's inevitable, and he doesn't want to announce that I'm getting surgery if he doesn't have to. But one thing that was clear in his conversation, John and Kyle, like a coach and GM would, downplayed it. Not that he was going to return, but they were not pounding the table that he's getting traded, right? And Jimmy came out just as honest as can be. Like, it's over, guys. It's over. We've already had communications. Never forget, he has a no-trade clause. Like, they can't just trade him to the Texans. They can't just trade him anywhere. He does have a no-trade clause. He does have power in this. But one thing that I do think that is powerful, and Barrows tweeted this out. He basically said, in all my years of watching this, that's as honest as I've ever seen a player. And he basically gave credit to Kyle and John for, when they came in, the distrust, the anger, the backstabbing, just the vibe was the opposite of that. And listen, it starts with Jimmy, the character to handle this situation. But I do think the whole organization, and one thing that I think sometimes coaches lie about, like we told him from the jump. We were honest from the jump. We called Jimmy when we made the trade. I can speak for myself. I thought that was like, oh, okay, whatever. I do think looking back, like they were pretty transparent with him from the jump and this whole period of time. And it led to, I think, Jimmy staying in a good place all season. And now they're in a good spot, which sometimes these things can get messy. I think it's kind of going to be Alex Smith to Washington. Remember when Andy traded him? Like they're in a pretty good spot, which I think these relationships, it's hard to keep them in a good spot. Now it helps when you win playoff games, and the season ended well for Jimmy. But, it was a slippery slope to get to this point. But I'm just glad that Jimmy put it on the table. Like, this fucking thing's over.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if the Niners want to do what they want to do, they can do that. Now they can't do it before mid-March. I think the end of the league year is when the no trade clause expires, right? Which is the middle of March. But I mean, I would have a hard time, no trade clause or no trade clause, seeing the Niners force something on him.
Wait.
Because-
You were saying when the new league year starts, his no trade clause is no longer in the contract with his 1 year remaining?
Correct.
So
Correct.
technically, the moment free agency starts, they could do whatever they wanted?
Right.
I didn't know that.
March 16th, they can do whatever they want.
So he basically had a no trade clause up until the last year of his, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. So it maybe the last year that, a lot of times what the truly what's on paper with the contract is different than how everybody understands it'll play out, because the reality is you don't play on the last year of a contract. If you're a quarterback, I mean, you do, but it's an odd. I know.
You see Ziegler's quote?
I know. So I shouldn't say that, but anyway. So, but again, and I've maintained this the whole time when the no trade clause comes up.
Star quarterbacks don't. I think you could argue a guy. Jimmy's probably right on the fringe. It'll be interesting. I don't know. I'm fascinated to watch Jimmy.
Yeah, but I just to make this point about the no trade clause, and I've made this point the whole time, is like, because he does have a year on his contract, the team that is getting him is going to want to talk to him about what his contract needs to look like.
Yeah.
And if Jimmy, let's say the Niners we're trading him to the Texans. Well, technically they can do that on March 17th, even if he says, I do not want to play for the Texans. But it's not in the Texans' best interest to take on Jimmy Garoppolo at whatever his contract's going to be worth next year, $27 million, whatever it goes up to, right? So he is going to have some power in this, even when he technically doesn't have some power in it, I would imagine. That's my guess.
I think it's going to be a team effort. I think they're going to be on the same page. I think what they're going to do is kind of let Don Yee facilitate it, and ultimately they're going to have to say yes or no to the compensation. But I think it's going to be one of those letting him run it, and you have to just get us on the same page with the deal because of what you've meant. Like, I think they really value the one thing that came through with John and Kyle is they really value Jimmy Garoppolo, the person. And that, and we'll talk about it later, like, that's important. I think Andy, when he traded Alex got a lot of money, if you remember. Do you remember when Alex was traded to the football team? They were the Redskins at the time. People were like, they just gave him $75 million. And they also traded like a second-round pick. There is a chance that whoever Jimmy is traded to...
Wasn't there a player in that deal, too?
Yeah, they got a corner, and I think, and a third-round pick. Maybe it was a second. But I just remember Alex getting a lot of money and people being floored. Now, Alex was a better player than Jimmy, but I do believe there's a chance that breaking news, the 49ers have agreed in principle with X team. Jimmy Garoppolo will be traded for a fourth-round pick or a third-round pick, a conditional pick, whatever, and has signed a 2-year extension for $38 million. Like, some people are like, what? That is very possible.
Yeah.
We see it happen every year.
Kyle Fuller. Good call. Yeah, it's because that's what you do with starting quarterbacks, right?
I think it's his brother. The Fuller.
Oh, it's not Kyle?
Kyle was the Bears. That was his brother.
Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller and a third for Alex Smith.
Fuller's dad had some pretty powerful sperm there.
Yeah. No relation to Fuller from
I don't know any Fullers.
No, the Fuller. Easy there, Fuller. Anyway, someone else will get it. So a third-round pick and Kendall Fuller. A part of that, if you're the team acquiring Jimmy, the compensation is going to probably be a part of what you're willing to pay. In other words, if you hear from Don Yee, like, all right, it's going to take 2 years and $42 million, you're like, well, I'm not giving up a third-round pick for that guy, right?
Yeah, I think the Niners would gladly do like a fourth-round pick and a Fuller.
And a Fuller. Yeah.
And you could argue that's a lot.
I think the player becomes a lot.
Well, remember when Alex went to Washington, remember that before he got hurt, I think they were like 6-2 or 7-2. Like, he was good. It was like he had just maintained his solid play. Like, is Jimmy as good of a player as Alex was, He's not. Alex was a little, at that point, less dependent on what was around him. He could just be an above-average player. It can't really be argued that Jimmy does need some stuff around him. Like, he can't just go to the worst team and you go, we got our quarterback, he can help elevate us, right? Because Breer reported that the football team is going to be sniffing around everybody. And they think that they already have some core pieces with some talent. Obviously, McLaren, draft a guy, right? Maybe another wide receiver. I think they make a lot of sense. You could argue Pittsburgh. Najee Harris, they already got a bunch of wide receivers. That might not be a terrible place. They are not going to try to lose, right?
Alex was coming off a 26 touchdown, 5 interception season.
Best year of his career.
Now he had Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt.
Do you have Do you have the following, like what he did until he got injured? Was he having a good statistical season in 2000?
Yeah, 18. He played 10 games he'd started. Was 6-4, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So he was not having the same year, as you might imagine, but he still wasn't turning it over. He wasn't throwing the ball downfield nearly as much as he had the year before, understandably, in Kansas City. But yeah, it was going well. You know,
I think a team would gladly trade if they know they can get 10-5 and be 6-4 with Jimmy as their quarterback, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, part of the question, and you brought this up, we've talked about this a lot. The acquiring team goes, we don't know if we're getting them for how many games we're getting them for.
Alex was much more durable.
Here's what Jimmy would argue. It was like, well, I only missed one game this year. Right?
He missed a half.
But you know that it felt very different than only missed one game.
Yeah.
This year. So, I think the teams
No, he missed 2.
He missed 2 games this year?
Well, because Trey Lance had 2 starts, Arizona and Texans.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Because he had multiple injuries. He had the calf injury that knocked him out of a half. He missed
and the hand injury.
He missed 2.5 games.
Well, yeah, you don't count the half game. He started that game. That's the way they count these things. But you're right, missed 2 starts.
I'm saying Jimmy says that, but if I'm the team, it's like, well, you missed.
No, that's my point. It's like what it looks like if you look at the box score and how it felt if you look at his season and how it felt are 2 different things, right? Yeah. You see, because what you see is 15. You're like 15 starts. Sign up for that.
I think the conversation in these meetings, and I've been not privy to the meeting with like the owner, head coach, like, are we doing this or not? Just the basic, like, let's just talk about the player with your couple pro scouts, your GM, and your personnel director. What are his biggest red flags? I would say his turnover-prone just nature and his injuries are kind of equals. Because if he was just completely durable with some of his turnover-prone, I think you would be cool with it. You'd be like, I got this durable player. He never misses a game. But I think you can just not count on him. I give a third-round pick for a guy that I probably want to extend just so I have him under a more cap-friendly number. But it's like, if he's my starter for the next 2 years, am I getting 34 games? Do I feel confident that I'm getting 30 starts?
No.
I don't think.
Well, one thing I said last year before the draft, and I think I was not totally correct. I think I was partly correct, which was that the reason they were drafting Trey Lance, they said, was based on availability of Jimmy Garoppolo. And at the time, my take was, that sounds good. It sounds respectful of Jimmy, but that's not why you're doing this. You're doing this because you know you need a better quarterback to win, and you're going to need a better quarterback soon. With hindsight, I don't think that wasn't totally made up, because I don't think they would have done the deal 2 1s plus a 1 swap plus a third if Jimmy Garoppolo just played every game for the previous 2 years, if he had just come off a full season. So I think it was ultimately what they needed to do and what they wanted to do. What they needed to do was to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. I think this organization needed to do that, especially as their other young star players begin to come into a window where they need to get paid. It's clear they're going to need more from their quarterback. And I think that if the Niners had just ended this season that they just played without a Trey Lance on their roster, it would feel like they were in a more helpless place than they actually are because they have Trey Lance on their roster, right? Like, how are they going to get a Trey Lance level prospect this year? What would we be talking about?
Well,
can you pull Tom Brady out of retirement?
Kyle Shanahan
can you trade for Aaron Rodgers? Are you going to trade? Is Questy going to send you Kirk Cousins? Like, what would we be talking about right now if Trey Lance wasn't on the roster?
I think we'd be talking about that.
It would. That's why I think Kyle watching his press conference was pretty optimistic. I think he's actually, all things considered, feeling pretty good about things. Because I think he's pretty excited for what comes next here with Trey. And I think, just as someone who watches them, I would like having a first round pick this year would not sound more fun to me right now than having Trey Lance on the roster.
Well, especially pick 29. Like, you're not getting Kenny Pickett at pick 29. The other thing, and we talked about this at the time, and listen, I have no clue if the guy's going to be good or not. He's physically gifted. I think he's a major project, like most young quarterbacks are. He is way more. He would have been a top 5 pick in this draft. And let's face it, without quarterback, he would have been the number 1 pick in this draft. Right or wrong, he just would have. Hell, he was the number 3 pick in a way more loaded draft. And he went ahead of a guy named Justin Fields, who, if Justin Fields was coming off Ohio State in this class, where's Justin Fields going? I got news for you.
Numero uno.
So, hell, Mac Jones in this class is probably going top 10 coming off that Alabama season, right? He ain't lasting to 15. So it just shows you that, I'm not trying to give them extra credit, and whether they factored in the bigger picture. They might have just been living like, we want this guy, we want to get up there, we like these prospects. The time is now. We don't want to lose anymore, because they were much more in the moment, and they should have been, right? They had just gone 6-10. They had to focus on, we have a good team. It's about now, and we can keep Jimmy. That they were thinking, like, this following year, what about these quarterbacks? And I also had a buddy that told me that, like, is a college guy. He goes, even if you look at the next class, C.J. Stroud is an awesome player, right? I mean, smooth thrower. Bryce Young looks like a little skinnier Russell Wilson. Physically, they aren't what, like, Justin Fields and Trey Lance are. Like, you look at Bryce, he's not physically what Russell is. And C.J. Stroud, which Kyle might have liked.
Narrow hips, as my old scouting buddy would say.
C.J. Stroud, he is not an athlete. He's a thrower, right? He's a pocket quarterback.
Yeah.
Who again, is going to go 1 probably or 2. So it's like, you're just not going to be in that mix. Think how lucky they had to get with Jimmy missing those 6 games. Like, Nick Mullins led them to some losses, right? Like, if Jimmy had played all 16 of those games, even if they would have been interested in getting the Fields or Trey Lance, even if the season kind of got derailed, they're 8-8 probably at worst, right? Remember the quarterback play against, like, the Eagles? Remember some of those games with Nick Mullins? It was like, as bad as Jimmy was, that stretch did put it into perspective. Like, God, it could be way worse.
Excalibur on YouTube says narrow hips. Is that a filtering category on Tinder?
Who do you got narrow hipped? CJ or Bryce?
No, when you said Bryce, I said, as my old scouting buddy, you would say narrow hips. I don't know if he even has narrow hips, but
yeah, it's crazy. Narrow hips, like, in society, is a good thing. In football, it's like, you love a kid. You see the ass on Kinlaw. Did you see the ass on Debo? Even they mentioned it today, right? Debo, without kind of saying it, Debo's built like a running back. What does that mean? He's fucking stout. He's thick.
Now, I will say one little addendum to that Jimmy conversation, the whole draft thing. If they hadn't traded all those picks, I wouldn't have been shocked if they had taken Davis Mills, like, in the 2nd round. But anyway, who knows? He would have made it to them in the 3rd. We know that.
I do think he scared off a lot of people.
Well, he has durability issues. So you're going to replace Jimmy with a guy he had, at least in college, durability issues.
Didn't his teammate too that went to the Jags, the tackle Walker, same thing? He had been hurt a bunch, right?
He'd been hurt a lot, yeah. And still
was there a kid today that Schefter tweeted about from Washington that just opted out because he broke his wrist or something? Do you see that? Okay, no, don't even worry about it. This is
okay. All right. So, all right, there's the Jimmy story. We'll unlike speaking of college athletics, we won't receive any penalties for failure to monitor. We'll keep an eye on that situation. The world will keep an eye on that situation. Next up, John, let's take a listen. We've left the question in here to 49ers, fantastic reporter from The Athletic, Matt Barrows, during the 49ers press conference.
I hate to blow my one question on a rumor, but there was a big one this morning from Boomer Esiason on his radio show. I'm sure you've heard it by now, that you were contemplating going back to TV. I was hoping that you could address that.
I thought he was talking to me. I was like, I've never been on TV.
Yeah, I have not heard that that rumor. From time to time, opportunities are presented. And I can tell you and tell everyone that that my commitment right now is to this organization. And we're just coming off a season, but my commitment is to the 49ers, to the York family, to Kyle, and standing up in front of that team yesterday and just getting an opportunity to reflect on what we have. And I do think we have something special, and we're here to win championships, and we fell short of that. But I think both things can be true, that that's our standard, but you're also the amount of pride and feel like it's a real blessing to be a part of this organization. So my commitment is right here, and that's where I'll be.
You had told me, but when I had heard, I was listening in the shower. I was about to hop in the shower, so I just played their press conference. It was like the second question. So I didn't visually see Kyle shaking his head, doing the little jab, and then I got out and I just watched the answer from John, and I could see it on his face. But there, you could see John's face, guy, when he's being asked the question, like, what the fuck? He is stunned. And Kyle, you had mentioned this, but when you watch it, you really realize he tries to, shatter the ice in the room, kind of.
Yeah, I think
John Lynch was stunned with that question.
Yes, and I don't. The goal is to not be caught off guard by anything when you do one of these press conferences. I'll say this first: we both have a ton of respect for John Lynch. He's been on this podcast actually, and I don't. He's clearly uncomfortable here. And you could argue he's just uncomfortable because I said that because we're about to say that his body language here makes us think that there is truth to it. That's why I mentioned that we don't take lightly. We love body language detective work. We love it. Love it. I love it. John Boy's made a career out of lip reading, right? So I don't take too much glee in this, but we do love body language work. So the point is we do this with respect for John Lynch. But his body language here, he is extremely uncomfortable, and his level of discomfort makes you think that there is truth. Makes me think that there is truth to it.
Well, it's easy to play conspiracy Bill Simmons here. Just add it up. One of the biggest rumors going, it's in just sports media because it's the National Football League, is Amazon is prepared to give Troy Aikman a ton of money. And then you go, okay, Troy Aikman could go to Amazon for $30 million. Well, what does that mean? That means there's no one sitting in his seat. Well, who does Fox have, on their lineup? Not really anyone of that stature. Who used to work at Fox in the number 2 seat? John Lynch. Who, since he has left, resume would make him, I wouldn't say, I just think when you're a quarterback of that stature, not Troy Aikman's level of just fame, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, 3 championships, different level. But since he left the number 2 chair, he's entered the Hall of Fame as a player, and he has been the general manager of a team that went to a Super Bowl and a team that played in front of 50 fucking million people on Fox. And he's worked with Kyle Shanahan, and he's worked with a team that I would say whenever the television schedule comes out, initially scheduled 3 or 4 primetime Fox games on top of just, obviously they have the NFC. He makes a ton of sense. And then the other thing, I text a couple people today because I didn't even know they were going live, honestly. I knew they were in the next couple days, but I didn't see the time or whatever, so I just got a text like, you just see John Lynch? I'm like, no. What did he say? Then a couple people forwarded me the comment. And my first reaction was, listen, I lasted in the NFL 3 years. It is such a grind. I can't even imagine the pressure on his level of just everyone answers to him. He has to put in the hours as all these other people, but he also has the stress. And then when he watches the games, he has no juice in terms of no juice to impact the game. That it had to be. I bet he'll say if I expect him to be done. It was the most gratifying, but it was also just it was an experience that I didn't even quite realize what I was getting into. Because I don't think he'd leave. He's already rich, right? I mean, he wouldn't leave necessarily for the money or whatever. But I think he kind of came, he conquered, and he also think about Adam Peters and Joe Shane were the finalists for that job. Adam Peters clearly is going to be the. I mean, hell, you could argue he was like a number 1 or 2 candidate just on the market this year. I thought he has a better resume than Joe. Maybe the Giants wanted to go more with an East Coast guy. I don't know. But his resume is pretty fucking good for a guy that's 42 years old or 40 years old or however old Peters is. The guy's going to be a GM, and he's sitting here, and he's from here. I mean, he grew up in Danville, went to UCLA. Like, he is a Californian. He was a 49er fan, right? I mean, it's a pretty special thing. So assuming him and Kyle have a close relationship, it's a pretty smooth transition for John.
Again, here's the other part of it. Have you checked Tony Romo's salary? He's making $17 million. You can make more in TV than you can as a GM. Now, if John Lynch stayed the Niners GM for the next 10 years, there'd be enough raises that you'd get up to.
Well, I mean, he did get an extension. What would you guess? I hate pocket guessing, but
pocket watching.
when you guess he's making $6-7 million right now?
Yeah, I think probably in the 7 range. He was probably making close to. What was he making when he took the job?
Probably 3 or 4.
5? See, yeah. I mean,
Bay Area prices, inflation. I mean, it's just.
I thought Kyle's reaction, because you and I were debating, is this the first Kyle's heard of this story? Maybe it's the first he's heard of Boomer. I thought, to me, Kyle's reaction was a guy who knows it's true,
I agree,
but is trying to cover. Like, oh man, you would, whatever Kyle said.
When you told me over the phone or went through text or talking before we hopped on that his reaction was he knew it was true, I didn't quite understand. Like, that's as loose of a Kyle move as I've ever seen. Because he shook his head like, no, I haven't heard. Play the start of that.
From Boomer Esiason on his radio show, I'm sure you've heard it by now, that you were contemplating going back to TV.
Try not to laugh.
I was hoping that you could address that.
I thought he was talking to me. I was like, I've never been
And then he
on
drops that.
Yeah, I have not heard that. That rumor.
Is Kyle looking at is Kyle looking at his phone right now? Is somebody texting Kyle right here at this portion?
Heard that.
Might be. Guy, maybe
rumor,
this. Maybe there is a chance.
From time to time.
That at this point in time,
opportunities are
Kyle's
presented,
pretty self-assured or whatever, is pretty just not his phase. Like, maybe Kyle doesn't know, but he just played it pretty cool there. Thought he was talking to me. There is a chance.
We're just coming off a season.
John's
where
rattled.
my commitment is to the 49ers, to the York family, to Kyle, and standing up in front of that team yesterday and just.
Somebody said have a
And
liberty
on a
telling
rumor,
what
but
Kyle's
there was
off
a big
mic.
one this morning from Boomer Esiason
Right
on
here.
his radio show. I'm sure you've heard it by now that you were contemplating going back to TV. I was hoping that you could address that.
I thought he was talking to me. I was like,
He says, I thought he was talking to me.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
I have not heard that.
Doesn't he say someone
that
offered him a
rumor,
job here?
From time to time, opportunities are presented, and
Yeah, from time to time, opportunities are presented, and then his ankle itches suddenly.
I can tell you.
What is so-
and tell-
when-
Oh no! His ankle does. It's not that his ankle itches, John. He moves his bottle of water. That's what he does here. Watch this.
talking to me. I was like, I've never been on TV.
He
Yeah.
reaches. He's got a bottle of water
I
on
have
the
not
floor,
heard that. That
and he
rumor,
moves it for some reason.
From time to time,
He's caught
opportunities are
red-handed.
presented. And,
Bottle of water. Move it.
I can tell you
Move it.
and tell everyone that that my commitment right now is to
Holding it.
this organization, and we're just coming off a season.
Well, here's the thing,
but
guy.
My commitment is to the 49ers, to the York family, to Kyle, and
Yeah, you can talk. I lowered it here. You can talk over. it.
Yeah, I mean, he is not. When you get a guy like this who turns out to be like clearly his value to the 49ers was incredibly high, is that he didn't need this. Like Kyle at this point in time, so rich, he doesn't need it either. But Kyle's even said, like, I'm good at one thing, it's coaching football. Like, John's done other things. He played football. He then did TV. He's called games. Like, he does not have to do this. And I think the grind that goes on, especially when you have, listen to that Belichick book. The drive-in Bill before they won that Super Bowl was just obsessive. Like, he does have a young guy who has just not got to the mountaintop yet. And every waking moment until he figures it out, whether that's next year, whether that's 3 years, whether that's that drive of just.
For Kyle, you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's like his pedal to the metal is not going to be like, this year we could just kind of, instead of going 80 down the freeway, let's just cruise like 66.
I also think, don't you? No, you're right. You're saying Kyle is not. I think Kyle, now he's going to take 2 weeks off, go play catch with, hopefully nothing happens in Cabo. The Rams don't add some other free agent. The key for him is to go right now before Sean McVay's down in Cabo. But who did you say the other day he'd meet in Cabo?
Who?
Oh, Brady? I don't know. Anyway, I thought you made a Shanahan and Cabo joke. But I like I said earlier, I think Kyle is very fired up for like climbing the mountain again, trying to do it again. Because I think what happens when you're close sometimes, it can go two ways for people getting really close to something. You can think, oh my God, that was so hard. I got to go through that again. Or you think, I was so close, I'm going to get closer the next time. How many times when you're shooting a shot from like, over the house, or you're playing a video game, you're like, one more time. And then it's 6 more times because you feel like you're close. And that's kind of Kyle. Kyle's like, one more time. I'll put the controller down. Last time, if I die again, I'll quit. And then you get killed in the video game and you keep going. And that's Kyle. Like, Kyle's really excited. The other thing is, I think games are fun for Kyle. He gets to call the plays. I don't think games are fun for John. I think they're really stressful for him, probably. How many times have you seen a shot of John Lynch on TV during an Niner game? It's pretty helpless up there in the booth wearing a suit.
Sucks.
I would guess he loves, like, after the game he loves the game in hindsight, right? But I bet it's pretty stressful for a guy that used to play the game to just watch this team.
Yeah, I just think he, ultimately his goal, I'm sure, was to be a GM and win a ring, and they got damn close. But I do think he can leave, like, pretty fucking successful.
Yeah.
Having drafted and getting credit, whether it was like he was pounding the table or not, he was the general manager of a team that made all these moves with all these sweet players that are on the squad, right? So and like you said before we hopped on here, his value now to Fox is much greater than it was when he was on, and he was solid, right? Just like Steve Kerr. When I always thought Steve Kerr was a little overrated, as like he was fine, and I think Lynch was
I thought
he
was like plus. I thought he was pretty good.
I
on
think
TV.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like him and John. To me, they just lean a little positive. I guess I like a guy that would be a little more negative, and because I actually think they have some similarities. But I think if you bring them both back, like Steve now obviously has won championships and coach, like would be so valuable. He'd be the number one free agent in the history of broadcasters for basketball. I wouldn't say John is that, but his value is just way higher. And I do think the Adam Peters thing, like you have a guy that like I can set Kyle up, assuming that those guys are close and that was what would happen, but you would think like they're pretty closely aligned, right? Because the other thing you see, the shots are John is always with Adam. And I do think sometimes like from the Belichick, just the stories around like he doesn't teach anybody. And I've read a lot about Joe Shane, the Giants guy. He said one thing Brandon Beane really did for me the last several years is include me. Because if you're not included in these things, it's hard to really know what's going on. Besides, like I can just sit in my office and watch players and get ready for the draft. But when I get included in trainer meetings, included in salary cap meetings, like I think it's pretty fair to say that Adam Peters has been included, maybe from the jump, but definitely the last, once they started winning, like has been like pretty tight at the hip with John. So he's pretty equipped to just. It's such a smooth transition.
Mac Trey says, I think Lynch wants to win a Super Bowl.
Well, of course he does.
I'm sure he does. Be interesting. If he were to leave, it would not. I mean, you would stay through the draft, right? If that is what would happen.
Yeah, it's like maybe Fox doesn't need you till the season. It's like
maybe do a Debo contract.
Do you think he? Because I saw someone in the chat said, "Well, if they had the choice, Sean Payton or John Lynch, would it be a little bit of a risk for a guy that's never done TV to put him in the number one chair with Joe Buck?"
Yeah, well, and the risk would be that Sean would leave again in a year or two, right? I think the thing that John Lynch would have is, first of all, him and Burkhardt were so good together because Burkhardt's really good. And I've talked to Burkhardt about him. I think you've talked to Burkhardt before too. Like people love John Lynch, loved working with John Lynch. I'm sure Joe Buck would love to work with John Lynch. It would just be an easy, it's one of those tie goes to the better guy. Now, I don't know if it's a tie, and I think Sean Payton would be a bigger star. Like if you said John Lynch is taking over number one crew, Sean Payton's taking over number one crew, I think Sean Payton's a bigger star, and no one's heard him before, so that'd be part of it. It's like, God, what's Sean Payton going to be like? But I think Sean Payton would bring the risk of having to replace him again in, a short amount of time.
Yeah.
We think
they've had
Romo, save $7 million and pay Lynch 10. CBS?
You would say that Fox has had pretty special stability with those two guys, right?
It's hard to get bigger than Cowboys quarterback, right? Like there's no, if I said Aikman's leaving, who do you get? Like who would be your list?
Dak?
Cooper Kupp's dad?
Yeah. Kellen Moore, he's finally leaving the Cowboys.
Jason Garrett. They'd be like, Jason Garrett, it's gonna work. Like, oh.
What if it did?
Greg Olson, people in the chat, Greg Olson. Yeah, Greg Olson's very good as well.
Stephen Jones is like, I'll just fill in the chair until you need someone else.
Just the back, whoever they're, Cooper Rush. What if Cooper Rush was just like, Cooper Rush gets the job and everyone's like, Cooper Rush, this guy's unbelievable.
What if it was Cooper Kupp's dad who played?
I already said that joke 30 seconds ago.
Oh, you did?
That's funny. I missed things you said.
That was a good joke.
Somebody made a comment earlier about the Jags at the number 1 pick, and I saw it, and I'm like, what are they talking about? Must have been a response to something you said.
Jags got the number 1 pick when?
Jimmy G to Fox? That would work.
Would they take Jimmy G right away if he wanted?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's like a Fox, the rating, 38 million people watched, 37 million of them women. I think Jimmy would actually be pretty good because Jimmy is I think he comes off pretty relatable.
I think, yeah. Jimmy's got a bright future ahead of him, no matter what he does.
Can't Tame, he says Juice would do great. Use check. Agreed. John, before we go any further, let's tell the people about BetterHelp.com/HamPod. BetterHelp.com/HamPod. We've been telling you about BetterHelp.com/HamPod. They sponsor this show. BetterHelp.com/HamPod is. Sorry, I got distracted by something.
I can't even find it.
You can't find it? Let's start it over again because I got an issue going on over here. I went to the wrong website. We're gonna start this whole thing over because I like to try on the stream and bring up the website. Here we go. All right, John. This show is brought to you in part by BetterHelp.com/HamPod. BetterHelp.com/HamPod is online therapy. You get cars tuned up. You get the rest of your body checked out. You get your computer fixed. You get your AC unit checked before the big heat wave comes. Why not maintain your mind? You get annual checkups for anything else. So here's the way you maintain. You go to BetterHelp.com/HamPod. It's customized online therapy that helps with video. Okay, you can do phone. You can do live chat sessions with a therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to, although that option is definitely there. And it's much more affordable than in-person therapy. You can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours.
100%. I saw someone in the chat say Marshawn Lynch to fill in for Aikman. Well, what did Marshawn Lynch say? Take care of your mentals. And we know, especially these last couple years, keeping your mental health straight is a big deal. And there's no better place to, go into therapy is like all of these. It's routine maintenance for your mental and emotional wellness to prevent bigger issues from starting. So BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even chat live sessions, like I said, with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera. It's more affordable than in-person therapy. You can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. BetterHelp.com/HamPod. That's BetterHelp.com/HamPod. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/HamPod.
Don't just take it from us. Go to the website. Go to BetterHelp.com/HamPod. Testimonials are posted on the site daily, so you can read from actual patients. Anything you share is confidential. It's convenient. It's professional. It's affordable. From whatever you might be going through, grief, anger, family conflicts, self-esteem. We all have them, and BetterHelp can help with all of those situations. So BetterHelp.com/HamPod. You get 10% off your first month if you're one of our listeners and go to that website. So BetterHelp.com/HamPod.
I saw this in the chat, and I actually completely agree, though I don't think he would do it because he's clearly a pretty private guy. if Jimmy Garoppolo was the Bachelor, like if he retired at like 34 and just was on the Bachelor, I think it would do historic ratings. Because if you think about it,
I'd watch. You'd watch.
It would do a double whammy. All the girls would naturally watch because it's the #1 rated show, I think, in primetime television, and it would draw guys in that never actually would watch. Be genius.
I mean, they go the quarterback route before, right? Jesse Palmer, Jordan Rodgers. They've done that before.
And you'd say Jimmy's on a completely different level than those two guys, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, those are guys. I'm not talking looks; they're both good-looking dudes. I'm just saying from a fame standpoint.
Yeah.
Rodgers was pretty big just because he kind of coattailed his brother, but
if Mark Sanchez can get a TV gig, Jimmy is a lock if he wants it. All right, 3 things on that. 1, Mark Sanchez is pretty good on TV, I think. 2,
never really listened.
I think Mark Sanchez does a good job. I think he's like one of the better analysts on TV pretty quickly. Kind of, to me, Greg Olsen-ish. And also just like has some Romo qualities in that he's not afraid to just kind of be himself.
He's kind of a fun guy naturally, right?
Yeah. 2, he was the he was the quarterback of the Jets for back-to-back AFC championship games and USC. So let's not act like Mark Sanchez is some like, Mark Sanchez can do it. Like, no, I mean, Mark Sanchez is a big star. Let's not forget. Mark Sanchez is a star.
You remember when Pete told him not to go pro?
Yeah, I think Pete admitted he was wrong about that.
Yeah. He went 5th overall.
Not that you could argue after that point in time, right? All right. Okay, a few Trey Lance things we wanted to go through here, John, from what was said during the Niners press conference. Let me make sure I've got kind of the order here. I'm not sure what order these are in, John, so let's just play some things said about Trey Lance and react to them. Here we go.
We were at 3-5. That was kind of the breaking point where I knew it was getting close. I know everyone else thought it was there, but I agreed it was getting close to there. But once we won that game and went to 4-5 and ended up winning 4 in a row, I thought we had a chance. And
okay, so remember the Niners were 3-5. The 5th loss was their loss to Colt McCoy and the Cardinals. They played the Rams the next week in prime time and won. So what Kyle's saying is, I know everyone thought the time was to put Trey Lance in at 3-5, and I know we were getting close. If the Niners had, instead of beating the Rams to get to 4-5, lost and were 3-6, is Kyle saying he would have started Jimmy against the Jags week 11? You think?
What he was saying, I was close. Maybe it wasn't the Jags game, but he was getting starts at the end of the season. I can just say this, as someone that's in the Niners content business, I'm glad the way it played out because 7-10 season with some Trey starts would not have been as sweet as what we just took in. So I was critical of the way he was handling it, like a lot of people were back then. Now I've pivoted weeks ago. He made the right decision. And, it shows you how, because you texted me the other day, you said that if Tart had caught the ball and the Niners win, Stafford's, the GOAT in a bad way, right? If a couple balls bounce the wrong way and they don't win that Rams game, and let's say instead of making a comeback, they end up losing 30-17 or something, it wouldn't have felt the same. The whole Jimmy vibe, I'd say. Even Jimmy had come so far and quieted so much of the Trey hype that by the time he made that play at the end of the game, I don't feel like a lot of people even blame Jimmy. I think that everyone came to grips with kind of what Jimmy was and appreciated what he brought to the table down the stretch.
I think also partly because even if that ball, let's say, is if he doesn't try and get rid of it, then there's a 4th and 25 is coming up to save the season, which, it's been made before, right? But I think if that was first down, I think there'd be a lot more anger. It would have, it was about to be 4th and 22, right?
And he was running for his life.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but
now,
I the other thing I think we can come to grips with too is the big games down the stretch. I think the Tennessee game and all 3 playoff games and the Rams' final playoff, or essentially was a playoff game. I know they lost the Titans game, but I just don't see how Trey, given what we saw with the Texans, that I think he would have been overwhelmed. It would have been too much for him.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't write off completely that he would. This is where I think it's, everything's black and white. You won the game or you lost the game. Like to your point on Stafford, so you're either the guy that won or you're the guy that lost. There's no in between. Who knows what happened? Maybe they lose to the Vikings, but they beat the Seahawks. Who knows what happens? But I do think it's interesting for Kyle to say, I know everybody was talking about it, and yes, I was thinking it too, right? He was aware of the conversation going on outside, and you don't have to be listening to every podcast to know. Like, it's pretty obvious what's going on. Sure. By the way, the questions that are being asked to you, if nothing else. But I think what's interesting is if they had lost to the Rams instead of beating the Rams, they would have been then 3-6, right? Well, that is now decision time because you're playing the Jags. So if you play Jimmy against the Jags, you do win that game, right? You're winning that game. So then you're forcing him against you wouldn't play him against the Jags only to play Trey Lance the next week against the Vikings. So they probably had to lose another game after the Rams game. That'd be my guess. Based on what he's saying.
It's hard to tell if he's injured and playing shitty. I mean, maybe you start getting 4-6, you just get a little desperate. It's much easier to operate when you're 5-5, right? Or 6-5 or 5-6. But to me, once you get several games under 500 in November, I think you can throw a curveball. It would have been understandable. 4-6 against the Vikings, I think you could have justified it there.
But what sense would it make then to play him against the Jags, right?
Well, because it was an easy landing spot. They were terrible.
No. Well, what sense would it make to play Jimmy? It would, to me, that's the spot you play Trey. Yeah, you don't play Jimmy against the Jags if you're going to replace Jimmy the next week against Minnesota.
Yeah, I think if it's flip-flopped and they get their ass kicked against the Rams, I think he's starting against the Jags. Now, when I'm saying that Trey couldn't have handled those games, I'm talking about one-off situations. Who knows how it goes, like you said, if you get game in, game out, game in, game out, game in, game out, right, and keep improving. I'm talking about just specifically Trey started against the Rams. Trey started against the Packers just with his 2 starts. You should naturally, when you're talented, right, think about all the players on the Niners, besides Bosa, who just immediately was great. Kittle got better and better. Debo, better and better. Ayuk, better and better. It should be a natural progression for talented players. Most guys are not like Trent Williams and Bosa, just here to be an all-pro, right? And I would say quarterback probably more than most because I was thinking about this underrated part, and this is what's so hard, I think, to be a young quarterback is because most of the guys beside Mac, really the other 3 guys beside Mac, because Trey doesn't fall under this, are kind of got shit on this year. Do they suck? I mean, I think every single market, Jags doesn't really have a market, but definitely the Jets and the Bears, there have been several talk radio and podcast conversations of are we sure this guy's good? And then I think people loosely have done that with Trevor Lawrence. You are just, I'd say your first year, just listen to Peyton and Brady talk, just trying to get your bearings, right? What's the offense? Who am I playing with? Every single week is a new coordinator, new looks. It's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And luckily, to me, they really, really benefit from this transition. That Trey got 2 starts. I think 2 is a lot different than fucking none. He got 2 weeks where he got to prepare all week to be the starter. And one was a really good team at the time. I mean, they were the best team in football. And the Texans, to me, just having the chance to get a second start late in the season, beggars can't be choosers. That was big.
Mm-hmm. I also think
and he was struggling in that game and then kind of got to flip it, right?
Yeah, and also the experience early in the year where Kyle was thinking about, putting Trey in and then realized he couldn't find places for him. I bet that experience benefits Kyle when it comes to finding a backup quarterback.
Agreed.
Trying to figure out who his backup's going to be. Is Nate Sudfeld going to be Trey Lance's backup? I mean, maybe he is. It's hard. You don't get to you're picking from a small pot, right? When it comes to backup quarterbacks. But
I do think you would like a guy with some experience that you could pay $2-3 million.
Well, it would be ideal, but he's not going to be available to you.
Mariota.
Yeah, but he's just going to be too expensive.
Nick Foles, someone like that. Someone in that
Foles,
mold.
very different stylistically, right? Not mobile.
Trubisky got $3 million to be Josh Allen's backup.
Tyler Bray?
Yeah.
All right, let's listen to another clip here. This question was a question asked to Kyle. I think Kawakami asked this question about what he learned about Trey Lance. This is just part of that answer.
The good person, the good human that we thought. He has the work ethic we thought. He's as smart as we thought. He's got a natural charisma to him that I believe is a leader. he's kind of the baby on the team this year, just in terms of his age and stuff like that. But he has a presence to him that people will gravitate to when he has that position.
So, one of the things Kyle said was it was harder last year to evaluate, get to know people, because you're just not spending as much time with them due to COVID as you would in a normal year. You're not sitting down with them as much as you normally would be able to, flying them in for workouts, all that kind of thing, sitting down with them while they're working, after the workout, spend a day, whatever. And I think that's important because it speaks to, and John Lynch mentioned it during the press conference, the core of what they are. And even Lynch said, we're not looking for choir boys, but we are looking for toughness, competitive character, leadership character, all those types of things. I think it's unknown if he will live up to what they traded for him and where they drafted him. But I think it's going to be really hard for Trey Lance to just fail. I think it's extremely unlikely that he fails. And the reason I think that is, one, that stuff right there, right? Once upon a time, the Patriots, Michael Lombardi got a special project from Bill Belichick, and it was find us a quarterback to draft, and let's pick between Jimmy Garoppolo and Johnny Manziel. They made the right pick. It's such a core of quarterbacking. Like, are you that guy that Trey Lance clearly is?
You're saying that that part of the book, there are two options to pick a quarterback that year were going to be those two guys?
That's who they were deciding between. They wanted a little more Josh McDaniels. They wanted a little more mobility.
Wow.
And that's who they were choosing between. So, I think that combination of who the guy is, paired with his physical traits and Kyle Shanahan's offensive ability, I think it's, I'm not saying he's going to carry them offensively year one. I am not saying that. But I'm saying it's going to be really hard for him not to be a net positive for the team. I think it's, is he going to be a franchise quarterback, top tier? Who knows? I don't think Trey Lance can fail for them.
Yeah, I mean, I just say on the character stuff, there have been a lot. I mean, the league is full of great humans. A lot of them make good coaches that, don't have the talent. Now, physically, we know he has the gifts, right? The size, the arm strength. There are just specific things with playing quarterback, right? Accuracy and touch. That is just something that has to improve, right? I mean, that's just something that he has to improve on. Now, I'm with you. You put Kyle, he has a great offensive coach with great teammates around him, and we know he's going to work hard. That stuff, I would say, again, it goes back to this guy. I'm not comparing. The chances that he's 90% of this guy are slim to none. Hell, if he's 75% of this guy, they got a fucking player. But I think Josh is a good example who fit all those.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, great guy, hard worker, did everything these guys asked in the offseason, goes right to Jordan Palmer, spends all of his offseason in LA working on his game on the fundamentals. So, yeah, run B. So now everyone has home theaters. You just get out and pee and press pause. That I do think that is improvable. And I've heard a lot of, I think Mike Lombardi's a good example of someone that was in the NFL for a long time. I heard him say over the last couple months that that is one thing that when I got in the league in the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s, it was a deal breaker. Inaccurate guys. I'm not saying Trey is inaccurate on Josh's level, but you watched him play with some balls kind of going all over the place. It is an improvable thing. And I think part of it, they benefit from the time, right? The timing of 2022 in the NFL. Windows are a little bigger. It's a little different game. And it's a little closer to 7-on-7 than the Aikman Young Montana days when you had broken backs and fucking concussions. So he does have specific things, though, that are just because I do believe that they're going to get him in position to learn football, to understand defenses. The offense is very quarterback friendly. Clearly, the IQ stuff that the Colts valued. What was it last year that him and one other guy?
The blue. It was like a blue check or something.
Was it him and Mac Jones or him and one other guy?
No, it was him and a
player, huh? Oh, Devontae Smith.
Yeah, Devontae Smith,
who's plus character. So. You bet on those guys. But, again, I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. They're just it's like baseball. You got to learn to hit the curve, right? You gotta hit, there is just going to be something that for him to be Because ultimately, like you said, if he's just if we're just like, well, he's the 12th best quarterback, like they are hoping for. You don't need to be top 4 guy, but can you just be like, he's a top 7, 8 guy? Like Stafford. He's not a top 5 guy, but he's damn sure like the Rams feel like they got a top guy.
He's
right?
he's not a tier 1 guy, but he is in that category where a quarterback can make up for whatever mistake a coach made, or a quarterback can fix it on the field. He can fix it.
To me, that's what they're looking for. I think everything else would be gravy.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, I think Sean McDermott would tell you, we didn't think he was going to be this good. But we did believe in him, unlike everyone on the outside, that he could be a really good player, right? So ideally, you just get a player, and this is where the character stuff comes in. They exceed your expectation because they just refuse to stop working.
Well, the character stuff matched with the physical ability. Let's talk about that.
I'm gonna take a couple weeks off and then go down to Southern California, work with some guys throwing the ball. Isolate on that, just throwing motion, working on that all the time, which I'd say 80% of the quarterbacks in this league do that.
All right, and then he said,
and then he caught himself there. He didn't want to give it up, huh?
Yeah, why didn't he want to say who he was going to go work with?
Maybe he didn't want everyone fucking going to the guy.
John Beck's like, I get my phone blows up every time you say my name, Kyle.
What would they have done if he would have said the name, right? Everyone would be attacking that guy to go watch.
But everyone will know the second that Trey posts on Instagram.
I know.
And then Kyle also added, and then we'll get him back up here, go through the playbook, some X and O's, and footwork. So Kyle is very hands-on, when it comes to the footwork aspect. We've talked about Trey's throwing motion before. I thought in his second start, it looked a little quicker than his first start, although it feels like, God, it'd be hard to do in the season. But this is, to your point, a big part of it as well, continuing to do the stuff, which again, Tom Brady, all these guys, Tom Brady, we reworked his throwing motion during his career. Like all these guys do this stuff. But it's not so much maintenance at this point as it is maybe, try. He really, I guess, hasn't had like an off season work on it, then work with Kyle. Then, it was it was 40 days last year that he got between OTAs and then come back for the fall, right? Wasn't it 40?
Yeah. I do think it's going to be fascinating because you're right. It's inevitable that the moment they start throwing, it's somewhere and it gets out relatively fast. I am interested to see who that's with because I followed Jordan Palmer on Instagram for a long time. He is Josh Allen. When he said LA, I kind of perked up and thought Josh Allen. God damn it, you internet!
It was actually fine. It would have been fixable. I wouldn't have had to edit it if you didn't start screaming about it.
I don't understand. I'm plugged in.
All of that would have worked. I could have edited. I was already thinking like it's going to be a perfect edit, but make the point again.
I saw you editing and I thought we were out.
No.
I do just wonder if it is Josh Allen and Jordan Palmer. I do think that's going to be fascinating because he is going to be comped to like the project like Josh Allen, even though they're different projects, but some similarities. And definitely what Kyle specifically said there, the throwing motion. Now, as people tweeted at me during the season, like Josh still throws it, got a little loopy. You just, when he plays, you don't notice it at all, right?
Josh Allen's ball gets, Trey, again, spirals are not the way you judge whether a quarterback can throw or not, right?
Peyton Manning didn't throw a spiral.
Peyton didn't throw a spiral. Sometimes you'll see a replay. Yeah, sometimes you'll see a replay and it's like, but see, non-spirals seem to be a trademark of guys without great arm strength. Would you agree with that?
I'd have to think about that. Yeah, it feels like Stafford throws spirals, Mahomes throws spirals, Allen's. I've never seen a wobbly Allen ball.
His ball looks thinner.
Kyler, it's just. Whoosh. Yeah, you're right.
So
not many Marino highlights of wobbly balls.
but sometimes just aren't. The highlight isn't the wobbly throw. I thought Trey has a very good arm. I think it will be interesting when we get a full season to really kind of evaluate what we think, like how his arm plays, right? The Matt Damon line from Ocean's 11, the nose plays. Like, how does the arm really play? We didn't have a lot of time, but it's clear. Again, we're just talking here. It's clearly more than good enough. But I don't know. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what it comes back looking like. He had some passes batted down early, which we thought were just a result of maybe defenses knowing that he was, having the time because of his throwing motion to get their arms up. But over a 17-game season, then you really get to evaluate. One game with 5 passes being knocked down can be fluky, So
it wasn't an issue. I mean, they were playing the Texans the second time around, right?
Yeah.
And it was J.J. Watt, who's one of the greatest pass blockers in the history of the league.
That's true.
I think he knocked down several.
But part of it is, don't you need time to learn how to throw around NFL players? Like, all of that stuff might take care of it. That might take care of itself once he just gets a feel for the rhythm of an NFL game,
I mean, we have a long time to talk about this, but just now that it is just because, I mean, not that it wasn't clear from the moment they drafted him. The build-up and the lead-up to this guy, just the whole thing being built around him, like the pressure is pretty immense. So we talk about the player, the character. There is just unquantifiable, like, what's it really like when every single day for OTAs, training camp, like, you're the guy? Like, this is hard. It's the NFL. You go through adversity even when you play well. Like, you lose, you just ask Josh Allen. He just lost a playoff game where he's like, I had the greatest game of my life. Like, shit's hard. It's why did you see the Ryan Poles comment from the Bears that we're going to win the North and never give it back?
I did see that comment.
In what world, when you're a young, unproven, it's your first job, do you ever say something like that? And I started thinking, like, obviously Belichick's the extreme of say nothing. Being around Coach Reed and now just watching Kyle really closely, and I just feel like I watch Sean McVay pretty closely too. You do the opposite. And I think they do the opposite not because they're even trying to bullshit you, because they know how easy it is to get fucked on the other side. Like, a bad bounce, a screwed up play, whatever. And there's going to be elements of Trey where it's not inconceivable. You just, like, you depend on the matchups. Maybe you start on the road and you have a rough opening game, and then you have a good second game, but you're 0-2. And people are like, you're 0-2? What are they going to do? It's football. The Colts, ask the Colts. They've started like 1-4 the last 2 years.
I think it's also like, why put a target on your back when, and this is more of a Ryan Poles comment than it is a Trey Lance comment. But Trey Lance is a good example, actually. Trey's not going to do anything that puts a target on his back. Just like Garoppolo isn't going to do anything that puts a target on his back. Just like Shanahan's not going to do anything that puts a target on his back, right?
For sure.
At least players, like, you're on the field, you're the one that has to answer for your comment, right? Like, you have to play the game. General managers, it doesn't make any sense. It's funny you bring that up, because I think there's something going on right now where I think maybe it's a result of inexperienced coaches and GMs getting jobs, like guys who've never been head coaches before, whose resumes are like, okay, not obvious resumes. Like, Kyle's resume was an obvious resume. Nathaniel Hackett, Ryan Poles, these are not obvious resumes necessarily, right? And there's so many people getting hired. And I think part of what happened, a lot of these guys were talking about, like,
Uberflus. I mean,
a lot of these guys are talking about, like, Bears Nation and Bronco Nation, and I understand why you do it. And look, John and Kyle, who are guys that have a lot of security, they talk about the faithful too. Like, a lot of teams do it.
Are they told to do that by the PR?
No, they're not. Well, John and Kyle are not. Kyle said it because Kyle believed it. But I think it's that kind of, when you're kind of insecure, when people maybe you're hearing don't think you're qualified for the job, you try to just pander a little bit to them and go, I know what you guys are out to do. I'm here to learn the fight song. It's a very college thing. And it's kind of weird because we're seeing it in the NFL a lot. And it's kind of weird to me to see it in the NFL as much as I feel like we're seeing it. In college, I get it. Because in college, the boosters are a big part of the whole operation. In the NFL, this whole, like, I'm here to Bears Nation, I'm here for you, to me is weird. It's collegiate. It's not NFL. It's not pro. And it makes me wonder, like, I don't want somebody who's thinking like that all the time, who's worried about what the external opinion is all the time. And I think you want guys, like, I'm sure people tell them, like, hey, don't forget to shout out the fans. Like, okay, that's a reasonable thing to do. But I don't know, man. I'm with you. That comment was.
I woke up this morning. I just woke up and I couldn't go back to bed right away. So, unhealthy, grabbed my phone and I just clicked on the Athletic app. And I was like, I'll read something. And I read they must have hired like a newspaper columnist who's like an old, he just knows what he's doing. Like they're Kawakami in Chicago, and just wrote an article on what he witnessed at the press conference, and was kind of blown away. One, by the polls comment, like, who's saying that? And Uberflus, he thought was just kind of full of bullshit, like just saying classic cliches, and just looked a little like both guys were like, are we sure? And back to Trey Lance, like that's what Justin Fields has to deal with. Like the one thing I thought, like just seeing some clips of those guys, is like that's Justin Fields' caretakers, where even if John Lynch heads to Fox, like he's got Kyle, and he's got really the teammates around him: Debo, Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk now, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. Like they just have an infrastructure that you feel like, honestly, I kind of feel bad for some of these younger quarterbacks. With Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, like it's just, what are we doing? And this is where Trey Lance, he won't even know this yet. How could he? How lucky he is to get drafted number 3. Most teams drafting number 3 don't play in the NFC Championship, right? Most teams, like when they got Patrick Mahomes, don't have a playoff team ready to roll with Andy Reid as their coach at 12 or whatever. And there are certain guys that get lucky. Like ultimately Brady's story, it probably still pisses him off, but the best thing that ever happened to him is he went to fucking Bill Belichick. Joe Montana got drafted by Bill Walsh. It's really, really hard to overcome. Like I would say there's a decent chance that Ryan Poles and Uberflus make it like 3 years. And there's a decent chance in 3 years where like Justin Fields sucks. And it's like, maybe he would have. And I think a lot of people that like didn't like him in the draft will be validated. And there's just a decent chance that maybe he was never going to be like a Mahomes or an Allen. But there's no way that he couldn't have been decent if he just would have if Belichick would have got his hands on him with Josh, right? Or if, I'm trying to think of just teams with, if McVay would have got Justin Fields instead of Matt Stafford, like the best would have come. Because I remember Lewis used to always be adamant this, and I'll never forget it. Like Trent Williams, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, like certain players. Like Jalen Ramsey's kind of playing an individual sport. He's just covering guys. He can dominate. Like you throw it at him, even though he had a funny tweet today, like the greatest quarterback of all time, last touchdown pass was on me.
Yeah,
with a laughy emoji. But like Aaron Donald, Trent Williams, if I put Aaron Donald or Trent Williams at 24 years old on the Jags, they're going to dominate. They're going to dominate. But quarterbacks, I'm dependent on all other 10 guys on my offense. I'm then dependent on my coaches helping me understand what's going on all 11 guys on the defense. And then I'm predicated on the guys that they've drafted and signed around me, right? And then on top of that, the play caller who's dialing the plays. And Trey Lance was very, very lucky because there were guys really beside Mac, the other four guys drafted, he's one of the 4. You would say the Jets, you would bet against that situation. Obviously the Jags is a royal disaster. And I think Ryan Poles and Uberflus doesn't exactly, even if Ryan Poles is solid, like you are so dependent on your coach, Uberflus could just be completely over his head.
Well, I mean,
Someone wrote that his speech sounded exactly like Joe Judge's opening speech, like word for word.
I got to go back and watch. Here's the thing: he doesn't coach the quarterback. So, Luke Getsy, the OC, the quarterback coach from the Jets. No,
I think it was the
Packers.
Yeah.
Sorry. But
do you have his wiki open?
Luke Getsy?
I would guess that guy is pretty young.
Yeah, he's 37. PA guy though.
What's his Where was he before the Packers?
Munhall, Pennsylvania. Was actually on the Niners in 2007 practice squad as a player.
Wow.
Off-season and/or practice squad. Played at Pitt and Akron. His resume, John. He was the Packers 19. He joined the Packers. He'd been at Mississippi State as an OC and wide receiver coach in 18. Was with the Packers before that on the staff. Quality control Packers. Western Michigan 13. Indiana. Why did I say Indiana, PA? Is that different? Oh, yeah. Different than Indiana. This is, IUP. Remember it used to be IUPUI? That Indiana team. Not Indiana Hoosiers. Offensive coordinator. Pitt. West Virginia Wesleyan. Akron. Grad assistant. So
he's only been a coordinator 1 year at Mississippi State. Other than that, he's been a position coach.
Was also the offensive coordinator at IUPUI in 11 and 12.
Which, in fairness, I bet he'd say like those were valuable reps for me. Just calling
Division
plays.
2. Yeah, Division II football.
Now his quarterback and wide receiver look like Haberman Middlekauff, but still. Like, do you agree or believe that if I say, hey, this guy's now the offensive coordinator for the 49ers, hypothetically, he'd have been an offensive coordinator one other year at a Power 5, and he hadn't called plays since he was calling plays at UC Davis 12 years ago. Like, are those reps valuable, or is it like it's pretty different coaching with little guys?
I mean, I think it's valuable just in terms of like what you learned, about how your heart beats the second you have to call your first play. Like maybe, like that might be a little bit valuable.
There is a play clock. There is a rhythm that you just have done before, right?
Yeah. So maybe that. But beyond that, I'm not, I don't know.
Remember when we schemed this little pass rusher? He was from Modesto. He was at Weber State. God, he had a little get off. I thought he'd get a look in the NFL, but no one even gave him a tryout. He was the best player in our conference for 2 years running.
Nobody understands.
Yeah, 5'11",
the Ramsey's
245
Barden.
D tackle.
Do you know what it was like to cover Ramsey's Barden?
In
Barton?
fairness, he shattered Jerry Rice's records. Shattered Jerry Rice's records.
Was it Ramsey? Was it Barton or Barden?
Barden. That was an argument I famously heard when I got hired with the Eagles, was that the guy arguing for Ramsey's, who actually brought me in, Patch, was like, people are crushing his speed, and Patch pounds the table. He goes, I guess you just don't want a wide receiver that shattered all Jerry Rice's records. And then he like puts his head down because he realized everyone hates him.
What a line. If you're going to pull out the Jerry Rice card.
Yeah, to me, when you're arguing a guy that everyone doesn't like, if you have one of those, like I guess you just don't like a guy that broke Earl Campbell's school record. You drop something like that. It's just like your final line,
All right. One of the things that's getting discussed today is, should Mike McDaniel remember Josh McDaniels, Mike McDaniel. Maybe that's why Mark Davis said Josh McDaniel. Maybe he had Mike McDaniel on the brain. Actually, you made that joke yesterday. Give you credit.
We sure he knows the name?
But one of the discussions is, should Mike McDaniel take the Dolphins job? Is one of the things being discussed. We know DeMeco Ryans with an S isn't going anywhere. And the question now then turns to, will Kyle Shanahan have to replace his offensive coordinator, or quotes? But the good news is he doesn't have to replace his DC.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Mike McDaniel, who's been with the guy for, forever, right? Basically Kyle's entire important career, when he became a position coach to today, the present, is important. And I think Kyle would be the first to tell you that whatever he does, it's impossible to quantify what guys do on a staff that don't call the plays right. But clearly, like I've just been there, seen it, like their whiteboards, like, he gets whatever. He's in charge of the run game, the run scheme. Kyle Juszczyk has told us, like, his ability. He's an Ivy League guy. Clearly, the guy's brilliant.
Can I interrupt just to make one point before you say the but? Shanahan said in his press conference on Tuesday, when asked again about, I think it might have been Biederman asked him, now that you've had another day to think about the 4th down and 2 punt, do you think any differently? And he talked about how the problem was that it was 2.5 yards, that it went from 2nd and 1 to 3rd and 2 to 4th and 2.5. But that before I think it was either before the 2nd down or before the 3rd down play, he actually said into the headset, guys, if it's like 4th and an inch or 2, we're going to go for it. What do we like here? So part of what was happening in Kyle Shanahan's headset was Mike McDaniel, maybe Bobby Slowick, guys were talking in his headset about what play they would like on 4th and 1. So to your point, the decisions that get made, I don't know that Kyle Shanahan asks a lot. We don't know. I always get the impression Kyle does what he wants when it comes to play calling. But sorry, just an example of kind of what happens.
I wonder if it's maybe a little more collaborative than we think, just because he's been with Mike. Why wouldn't he? I mean, he's been with Mike from day one. But ultimately, the run game, it is his run game, right? I mean, it's his family's scheme. Mike McDaniel, even if Kyle would tell you it's the best system I'm ever going to have, and let's just say that's true, it's just much easier to replace someone on offense than it would be for him on defense, because they would literally need a new defensive coordinator, right? They need a new guy to call the plays. And it is the most valuable thing about having Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or, I saw Nathaniel Hackett said he's going to call plays. That's the other thing. Uberflus said he's not going to call defense.
No.
So I think that losing DeMeco Ryan would have been much. I think it would have been a huge question. I would have been. I think everyone would have been like, what the hell is he going to do? Is he going to elevate James, Belcher, the dude that had coached for Arians, and just move him up? He'd also been he's been a defensive coordinator several stops. Would he go in the Zimmer, Wink Martindale, kind of that crew? Vic doesn't make as much sense because he runs a 3-4, and it's pretty clear like what they do with their front. Like they're not running a 3-4. But like McDaniel, again, blow, but you don't lose a play caller.
Yeah.
Is he going to be the next? It kind of feels like he's a decent chance he's the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins.
So his second interview, there's some discussion. His second interview is, Kyle said, Thursday with Miami. Now, Miami needs to hire a head coach. They got some other things to deal with. If you're Mike McDaniel, I'm not being funny. One of the questions you ask in your interview is like, guys, are you going to ever tell me to tank? Right? What is my level of power here? And I do wonder, here's the thing.
What if you're like, hey, $250,000 a game, I'm in.
Maybe you put that in the contract?
Yeah, $250 a game, and I would say anything in December is $500,000 a game because that's really when we, get it in.
Yeah, no, a week, I guess what would it be now? A week 18 loss is worth a lot because it's hard to lose week 18 if you're playing a team that's also trying to lose.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of players that know they're going to be free agents. They're giving it their all. I'm going to have to call shitty plays. Week 18 is worth $1 million.
Any team below you in the standings, also you should get extra. Like if we got to lose to the Jets, that's hard. Losing to the Jags, that's hard to lose to the Jags. You got to really try.
Harbaugh got all those bonuses this year for making the playoffs and beating Ohio State. If I get the number 1 overall pick, that is a year's salary, that value alone, if it's going to end up with a quarterback.
Oh, like an a rolling contract.
Like an auto kick. Like if I win the national championship as a head coach, like $3 million bonus, like boom, $6 million.
At this point, it feels like a major win for Kyle. If after the year they had, he comes back with both of those guys. And one thing you do know, it feels like the clock is ticking on D'Amico, right? Like if D'Amico Ryans is the DC in 2023, how much would you bet against that right now? Quite a bit, right?
It feels
because this team's going to have more money on defense now this year once they trade Jimmy Garoppolo.
Feels like minimum 3 interviews next year and several second interviews for D'Amico, right?
Well, it's going to be, it's going to be, it's going to be like Saleh, where it's like, 6 teams want to talk to him. He's declining interviews because he just can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot.
Here's the other thing.
Unless like a Getsy or something like resurrects Fields or Trevor Lawrence, like that offensive coordinator could shoot up fast.
Yeah, coaching quarterbacks, but like coaching defenses, guys are still getting hired that coach defense. Like at the end of the day, I would always lean offensive play caller, right? Quarterback coach, because that's the most valuable guy to my team. But I'm not hiring a lesser coach than a defensive coach if I think the defensive coach is the best guy for the job. Like you still have to hire the best head coach. So, but it's a huge win. D'Amico declining the interview for the Vikings job a second time. Now, it's not like he didn't turn down the offer.
Yeah, sometimes,
right.
I listen, in fairness to just the whole process, a lot of times when a guy declines, he knows he's not getting the job. Sure. And Quessy, they had worked together. Maybe he tells him like, hey, man, I think my owner might force Harbaugh on me, who's interviewing on National Signing Day. Now it's part 2, and I read that they already
signed all his players. Still weird.
Still pretty weird. It does. If
you're Michigan, you're like, come on.
It feels like he's doing a little FU to them, right?
It does, yeah.
And I thought Harbaugh was above it, but clearly he's not. Unless he takes the job, then he really wants to leave.
Well, it feels like he wants to leave. Even if he doesn't take the job, it's going to be weird there, I think.
Yeah.
At Michigan. I think it'll be weird at Michigan if Jim Harbaugh's back.
So basically Kyle Shanahan's going to go into year 6 and only had 2 defensive coordinators that are both going to be head coach. That's pretty impressive, right?
It is. Yeah.
Because he handpicked hired him.
It's one thing if you're a defensive coach and then your guys get jobs because your defense is so good, right?
Yeah.
Like Pete Carroll.
Or your offense. You get a quarterback.
Like Pete Carroll's OCs don't get jobs. Pete Carroll's defensive guys got jobs. Pete Carroll's offensive coordinator.
I think you need to preface it. Russell Wilson's OC.
Well, we've done that video before. We did that topic already. Yeah. That's true.
Because he's the only one of the star quarterbacks that doesn't produce jobs for guys. It is kind of crazy.
Andre says Saleh will be back if we can keep Ryans for 2 more years.
I would agree. If Ryans doesn't get a job next year and goes 3 years, Saleh's probably on the market year 3. And who knows? Sean Payton right? You told me this, and you're dead right. Every head coach that is just not going to win next year is on notice. And any head coach with a big pocket owner is definitely on notice that's not winning. And when I say not winning, that could be 7-10. I mean, there's a chance Robert Saleh goes 5 wins next year. You don't think that Johnson, especially if Zach shows a couple signs, I'll just hire Sean Payton. You want to come work with Zach Wilson, be the head coach of the New York Jets, resurrect him?
Well, the Texans coach won't be on notice. The Jags coach won't be on notice. Sean Payton ain't taking that job.
No.
Those guys are safe from Sean Payton. But
I would say wouldn't you say the Jets and Sean Payton, couldn't you see that, them being interested next year if, all of a sudden Robert Saleh is 2-8 and they're just they're not going anywhere and this is not working out. But it's they really like the guy. They want it to work out, but the games are terrible. That's to me what it feels like it's going to be. They're a 4-win team next year. It's we love this guy, but God, our team sucks.
Itchy says, hopefully Saleh makes it. He seems like a good dude. Agree.
Yeah, we're all rooting for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's part of the brotherhood. Replacing
LaFleur also, I guess if Saleh does make it to year 3 and their offense sucks, LaFleur could be just get fired.
Well, he could. Yeah, I mean, would he come back to the Niners, or would he
does
go work
feel
for
like
his brother?
His
maybe
brother's losing a ton of guys.
Yeah, would go. The Packers are losing a ton of guys. Tom Brady has officially retired, John. That happened early Tuesday morning in the Pacific time zone. Schefter, I thought your Schefter tweet was that Randy Travis. I told you so.
I just typed into YouTube, I told you so, and that first came up.
I don't think my singing there is going to get us flagged for a copyright.
Did Brady in his 17 Instagram posts credit Schefter in Darlington or no?
As first reported by? Yeah. Well, Jimmy Trainor had a good take. He was like, his theory was Tom wanted to announce it in his final Man in the Mirror, ESPN Plus, Man in the Arena, ESPN Plus, and that's how the scoopage happened. Is because it was ESPN, somehow knew, maybe they had somebody on the production crew, whatever. That's how Schefter found out. As you said from the beginning, Darlington was right about Tom to Tampa. Tom did not thank New England until he did a retweet of a statement like, love you guys too. That actually did catch my attention because it's out of spite, right? It's out of spite that he doesn't thank New England in his statement.
Do you think so? Again, I saw something on Twitter. I don't know if it's true or not that he's going to do he's going to do the 1 or 10-day contract or whatever. New England officially retired.
Is that true?
Well, I saw Portnoy thought it was true, and then he thought he got lied to. So who knows?
Why would he not? You saying he's thanking only Tampa because his thank you to New England is going to be so big and heartfelt? That's interesting.
New England then tweeted something and he quoted it. So it was is that all he's going to do? I also I don't know. I'm torn on it. It's definitely a conscious effort, but does he have to? Didn't he already thank them 2 years ago?
He doesn't have to do anything. If he doesn't do anything for them, or if he does, either way, this is not accidental. Now, maybe it's because he's going to do a grander farewell. But if he does nothing else,
because he was going paragraph by paragraph. He's like, oh, the trainers with the Bucks. Oh, the food guys. Oh, Jason Light, my best friend. Oh,
where's the next page? Where's the next page? If he didn't thank them out of spite, it's a good lesson that if you do something out of spite, you are going to some degree also be injuring yourself. That means if he didn't thank the Patriots out of spite, he went out as a buck with that uniform and that big ass ugly logo on the side of his helmet.
He's going out without a buck no matter what.
Well, I know, but to go out, and I get it, it kind of feels like at the end Peyton was a Bronco, not a Colt.
He never left. He goes all their home games.
A little different though. I think a little different. I get it. I would understand it from Tom's standpoint, but
it is different.
The Buccaneers are the Buccaneers.
Did you read his IG post?
Jason Light.
Did you read his IG post after seeing the reaction, or did you read it first? Would just kind of because I was scrolling through before I saw the reaction. I was waiting to be I can't thank Bill Belichick enough, and Jules and Slater and just the core. I don't have enough room to name all the guys and Josh and all the coaches and Charlie Weiss starting my career, and it never came. And I was like, that's a little weird. And then I started seeing people reacting whoa, this is a little something.
I saw the post before I saw the reaction, and I wondered the same thing. Now, is there I'm looking for right now? Maybe there's a big Patriots thing he did when he left the Patriots. Maybe there's a big IG post where he thanked all those people. But
I would say that in 2022, you'd just argue like no one cares about that anymore. Like that's over. You just have to redo it.
you got to redo it. Yeah, I agree.
Partly because I don't think he would have had to do it if it had just been like the one-page post. Like, I'm retiring from Tampa Bay. Thanks for everything. God. But he just kept going. Now, Jason Light is a Patriot guy, but when he was like, Jason Light, a true friend for life or something, I was like, what is he? Is he throwing jabs at people right now?
The point was also made that the photo he used was a photo of a Bucs game in New England against the Patriots.
The greats are a little spiteful, right?
Yeah, he hasn't lost that. I mean, Jordan.
At least, I mean, Peyton was cut. Like, they cut him. He did hit free agency. Now, Bill didn't really want him back.
Well, here's another thing. Bill screwed up. Like, that's another. Tom might have left even if Bill wanted him back, but Bill messed up. Bill could have won another Super Bowl. Now, that Bucs team was pretty stacked. Bill Belichick went to the playoffs with Mac Jones.
Yeah, this team could have competed with Brady. They were so bad on the Allen score. They never stopped him.
Look, nothing's a guarantee. I'm just saying Bill ended up with a year of Cam Newton and a year of Mac Jones instead of 2 years of Tom Brady, and he would have had. I'm not guaranteeing a Super Bowl, but he would have had a shot.
Yeah, he would have had a shot. I agree there.
What do you get out of it? Two tight ends. Cool.
Well, you remember the story also was like Belichick didn't make it over to Kraft's house? Like, called him the next day or something? It was Bill's just listen. I'm not good at breaking up or kind of hell. My goodbyes are. I'm bad at goodbyes. Bill's just bad at goodbyes. But Bill was ready for a goodbye. I think the argument would be, like you said, it didn't have to be a goodbye. But I think Bill's nature, in fairness, 43-year-old quarterback, I think it was time. Now he didn't have. It would have been one thing if Jimmy or Mac were on the roster. He did not have. I mean, he ended up that season with fucking Cam Newton. Now I actually think it's going to age pretty well. He went 7-9 with a quarterback that couldn't throw.
It'll age well, but no one. It's not. But the problem with it, no one's going to remember the year. It's an irrelevant year. Why? You're right. It was a reflection.
Tom won the Super Bowl.
No, because it was a 7-9 season.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Cam Newton who couldn't throw.
I agree. It was
led the league in opt-outs.
Maybe he did text Tom, just the wrong Tom.
Tom House, who then forwarded it to Brady.
Tom Dimitroff.
He hasn't resurfaced.
No, he hasn't resurfaced. And you know who also we're waiting on a resurface for is Joe Brady.
Saw interviewing today for someone I saw today.
Like Mario Cristobal or something?
No, he was interviewing NFL team, pretty sure that already had an offensive coordinator that said, like, for a position coach. So it's like he's already fallen a rung. One thing that I had read on Joe Brady is because when Ed Ogeron got fired, I do end up occasionally on some message boards when there's a big story. I kind of like to dive into, like,
that's where the real action happens. Yeah.
The boots on the ground. Joe Brady had been adamant and told people when he left, like inside sources, like he hated recruiting. Like it was something he just didn't. I think he's maybe more introvert. I don't know what his deal is. Did not like recruiting. I think he avoids college. But didn't Rule hire McAdoo? I think it's his offensive coordinator.
Oh, good luck.
Rule's in trouble.
The message boards is where the first story of Caleb Williams going to USC. His car was seen on a flatbed headed west out of the city. That's Caleb Williams.
What kind of car?
It's like I saw the photo. It's like a blacked out Range Rover. I bet whenever we find out what he's making at SC, it's going to be. I mean, it's the biggest portal signing ever. In the short era of portal.
That was coming west from Sooner Country. You're saying?
Yes, yeah, because it was like, is he? All right, I'm gonna. No, oh yeah, Louisiana is east of Oklahoma.
Yeah, so it was coming this way.
So it had to be headed this way. Yeah, wasn't headed north.
The Sooner money provided the cash.
Yes, the Sooner money is what he got the Range Rover with.
I was told by a friend of the program at the Sooners is Caleb comes from cash. Like his dad has a lot of money. Because I asked, like, is money a big deal? And he said, well, his dad's really rich. It was more. I think he just followed Lincoln, maybe. Obviously.
Well, here's what I'll say. This, like, first of all, have you noticed? the second signing day is on Wednesday. If you're listening to this Wednesday, it's the signing day. It's not as big a deal. Like, a lot of the scholarships have been given out. The signings have been
Is
signed.
it a big deal at all? Haven't people been giving it to transfer portal kids?
Yeah.
too?
Well, USC is number 1 24/7 rankings in the transfer portal right now. Ole Miss is number 2, Lane Kiffin.
How do you rank transfer portal kids?
Just whatever the star ranking on the transfer is.
When he was coming out of high school.
So like Caleb, yeah, but I don't think you get, if you stunk, no one really cares if you're a 4-star, but
Caleb Williams maintained his 5-star.
So SC now has they've got a 5-star Caleb Williams and they got a 5-star quarterback coming in next year's class. So Lincoln's already got 2 5-star quarterbacks.
What was Jerry Rice's kid?
Brendan Rice, I think they got a lot of attention for the running back from Oregon that transferred to USC, Travis Dye, who led the Pac-12 in total yards last year.
Little number 24.
Was he 24?
Kind of a smaller
no
running
sleeves.
back.
Yeah, no sleeves, no gloves. Austin Jones, who is a running back from Stanford, transferred there. I think Brendan Rice is going to be. Brendan Rice, I've seen him in person. Colorado, he's big. Well, I mean, big. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's good. Like, he's good. I think he's going to be an impact player for USC
Drake London
next year.
type big receiver?
Not that type. But it's like good returner, scored a couple return touchdowns. He's a really good player. I think he's going to be a bigger impact player for them than Travis Dye's
I
gonna be.
texted a mutual buddy of ours that's on another team in the conference after they kind of kicked their ass. Maybe it was the next day, and we were just talking about it. He said, I was blown away by their lack of talent on their lines. And, Coward is like the biggest fucking SC fan. He's talked a ton of shit about their O-line has been terrible for years now. It's been really bad. And D-line, let's face it, just the Pac-12 D-line, beside like Mario getting some guys, hasn't been that great. One thing he had at Oklahoma, their D-line obviously, wasn't great. They've always had. I mean, they get 3 or 4 guys drafted a year in like the top 2 rounds at Oklahoma. That's a big point of difference for Lincoln since he's been there. Like they're producing 1st and 2nd round. The chief starter is Oklahoma's center, Orlando Brown. I mean, just constant
And he's really
guards,
good, right? Creed Humphrey.
tackles. Yeah, just tackles, guards, centers. I mean, that is something that like USC. Like if their O-line's not great now, he's not playing SEC teams. And one thing clearly this year, the Big 12, who I think everyone kind of shits on, I think they were pretty good this year, right? Oklahoma State was really good. Baylor's good. Obviously, Oklahoma is good. It just was a
Oklahoma
solid
sneaky
conference.
had a better year than it felt like they were having.
Oh yeah, I mean they had a disastrous year for them, and they went 10-2. So yeah, I just wonder, it's just hard.
Yeah, well, that's the part they need to
flip it around right away,
because
because how many sweet offensive linemen are in the portals? And if there are, I mean, isn't everyone trying to sign them?
Yeah, and defensive linemen for that matter, and corner. Like they need corners. Like they need a lot at SC, but it's hard. I mean, other than Utah, everybody's got questions. Everybody. I mean, Oregon stacked. Their coach has never called a timeout before.
It's kind of crazy to me, and again, I'm not trying to overreact to his 3 or 4 games. He needs a lot of work, but it sure feels like Jackson Dart has a chance to be a first-round player, and they just gave up on him.
Prediction: Jackson Dart's going to be a top 15 pick.
Well, are we sure Caleb Williams going to be a top 15 pick?
Well, Caleb Williams is not. He's like 6'1", right?
Are we sure that
Now, here's the thing.
Of the trade/free agency that Lane, could that guy be better?
Could be, but here's what I'll say. Caleb Williams last year as a true freshman in what you just said was not a terrible Big 12 was 20 touchdowns and 5 picks, I think. Was like with the Spencer.
Remember the K-State play or the Kansas play when they were going to lose? He ripped it out of the guy's hand. He got stripped and then he ripped it back.
And then he ripped it back.
It was a play.
And was not an ideal situation. And here's what I'll say for the guy, because you do wonder, like when a player takes this long to commit, you're like, what's going on? He did walk into a spot where there's no way Lincoln Riley could have guaranteed him he'd be the starter because Spencer Rattler was there. That's where he went. He went to a place with a 5-star quarterback already there and then kind of took his job. So I think that's a positive reflection of him. But I would, if Matt Corral's going to be a first-round pick, Jackson Dart's going to be a top 10 pick.
I don't think it's out of the realm possibility if he can do what they did to Matt Corral, that Jackson Dart doesn't become the number 1 overall pick.
Number 1.
Right?
I'll do you one better. Oh, I can't do you one better. Shit. Number 1.
right? I mean, he's 6'4",
Yeah.
got a big arm. He's just
We just
big.
went from first rounder to 15 to 10 to number 1.
Well, because you just got to go the highest ceiling. Now, after Hackenberg's first year, it's like, this guy, so Rosen, this guy, number 1 overall pick, 12-year pro, 7 Pro Bowls.
We just did the game where it's like, it was like, who's going to bat first? He'd be like, ah, damn. I should have gone first.
Who had
number
the
1 overall pick.
faster fall from grace? I guess Rosen's college career was better than Hackenberg's, because remember, Billy O left Hackenberg's college career sucked. But Rosen's fall from grace in the pros is unlike anything I think we've ever seen. He was a 10th pick, and he's like out of the league.
Oh, I thought you were
I
saying
guess
Spencer Rattler.
he's on the Falcons, but
He'll be-
kind of.
Oh, he already did the Niners.
Remember how terrible he was in practice?
Yeah. Yeah.
You never know. I mean, it's
I think people are going to want to, because SC gets picked every year to win the league.
Don't they open up with who? They open up with Georgia or something? Clemson?
No, that's Oregon. USC opens at home with Rice, bro.
Oh,
They go and be 1-0.
Maybe
they
it's
play-
No-
then
maybe
they
it's
played
Notre
Stanford.
Dame. Maybe it's Notre Dame, Clemson. That's Marcus Freeman's first game, I think.
Oh, SC does play Fresno State week 3.
Hainer, Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a couple of the Fresno State blogs I put like, mark it on your calendar.
Oh,
Caleb,
I know.
Hainer.
Barstool,
I was
Barstool
like, yes.
Dog, Barstool Dog sent me a tweet immediately like, "Get ready, September 17th." I was like, "Okay, I like these guys."
In fairness, like that is a sneaky hard game for Lincoln right away. I mean, Jeff Tedford is
Jeff Tedford, baby.
Hainer. Be some scouts there at that bad boy. That's not at Fresno State, right?
No, there's no home and home on that one.
They do. You
hard
come
enough
us
to beat the
7
Dogs.
7-0. You come to us 7 times over 20 years, and we go to you never.
I mean, it's malpractice to schedule a road game at Fresno State. A, because they could beat you at your place, and B, because it's going to be 120 degrees when you play them in September at their place.
When I was there, we played Wisconsin at home, and that was stupid on their
That
part.
game was at night, wasn't it?
Night game, yeah. Think of what time they got home. 7:30 kickoff. I mean, when do you get home? The next day at 6 a.m. How miserable is that?
Wisconsin win that game?
Yeah.
Like last second.
Yeah, I mean,
As
they
I
had
remember.
J.J. Watt and some other guys, you know.
All right. Anything else we need to hit today? I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, that's a long pod.
All right,
A lot going
everybody.
on.
Thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you on a Wednesday stream. We'll talk about that. John and I will
do the
offline
Wednesday stream by yourself.
that. Done. I know a good deal when I see it.
Later.